Hey guys, Jackdaw here, and today I am doing one of my revamped wish lists, ransacking into a feature that I would love to see in the next Dragon Age game. Of course, this is just a wish list, therefore it's just my opinion, as of which I endorse all of your thoughts and ideas, so do tell me all of those down in the comments below and I look forward to hearing from you guys. But leaving no stone unturned and getting into my wish itself, throughout the Dragon Age games, we've always seemingly had a family or been part of a family. This is all dependent upon your origin story primarily, because in some cases, a lot of the races don't really have a family like the Qunari. They have different bonds and different ties. But keeping it simple and looking at the human noble origin story within Dragon Age Origins, you actually have a family. A family that eventually gets slaughtered, but you can have a brother that does survive. His name being Fergus. And throughout Dragon Age Origins, playing as a human noble, you have a small subplot, which is finding your brother after the Battle of Ostagar, and this smaller story carries out throughout the entirety of Dragon Age Origins. Inevitably, until you finally meet Fergus at the end. And when you do meet him at the end, it just feels so satisfying, and very full circle when we met him at the start of the game with his wife and child, and then we see him at the end. Both playable character and brother representing the two cousins that have survived until the very end of this story in this hectic world. This smaller subplot of finding your brother adds a totally different appeal to the story of Dragon Age Origins. The fact that you and your brother are the only survivors of what happened in your origin story. It adds a new element to the already vast story of Dragon Age Origins, which just gives me another reason to love this deep, dark fantasy RPG even more. But moving on to the next Dragon Age game, in which it's mandatory that the player is human. Well, in Dragon Age 2, you got a full family within this game. Say what you will about Dragon Age 2, I loved it, so I'm going to talk about it. But seeing this family dynamic grow throughout the 3 acts of Dragon Age 2 was so satisfying to me. The whole family dynamic was great, you had a full family, and there were so many different role-playing mechanics that could happen, which just adds hours upon replay value. I don't want to spoil all of the different choices and consequences around the family, but at the very start of the game, solely dependent upon the class of the player, either your brother or sister will die, and the one remaining will become a party member for quite some time. This feature in itself just adds a totally different character. You can either get the lovable Bethany as your sister, or you can get the bamboozled ass Carver as your brother. I always go with Bethany. But this feature in itself just adds so much to the game. Even if you didn't like it, you should at least respect the fact that they pulled off a pretty swell family dynamic. Now if we move on to the next Dragon Age game, you will note that Inquisition had no family ties, as far as I'm aware at least. But I'll explain that later on. If we actually jump to Mass Effect Andromeda, in which family is a core theme within this game, we have a small rider family. This family obviously has your core father, mother and a sibling, with the playable character being the other member in this family. Now what I wanted for Mass Effect Andromeda was our sibling to join the team as a squad member, but instead they did the whole coma thing, which left them out of action pretty much until the very last mission. However, I did enjoy the content that we did get with our sibling, the whole bonding, being able to talk to them actually existing, and I really enjoyed the fact that we could customize them and build up a fun sibling relationship. I did, however, expect more. When I covered this news ages ago that we were going to have a family within the game, BioWare said your family will exist in the world space. That sounds so much more deeper and adventurous than saying, oh by the way, your sibling that you customized is going to be stuck in a bed for 3/4 of the game. However, when it did come around to being able to play as our sibling during the final act, I really enjoyed this dynamic. Overall, the way Andromeda built its family was great in parts and terrible in others, but the bond with both playable rider and sibling rider was done really quite well, and I rather enjoyed the final act, which invoked our sibling in a very dramatic way. So, I've shared how BioWare have already done family dynamics within their games already, whether it be by giving us a tiny NPC that we'll see at the start and at the end of the game, and this NPC only really affects small subplots and small quests. I've looked at how BioWare then went deeper upon this and gave us a family that surrounded the entire plot of one of their games, giving us playable family members and seeing full-on character development within them. And then I looked at Andromeda, in which we were given a full family which was customized and we could interact with them in certain set pieces, and then eventually we were able to play as them for a tiny segment segment of the narrative? Well, I'd like one of these dynamics to return in Dragon Age 4. Of course, if it makes sense narrative wise, it needs to make sense for the player to have a family incorporated in the story. Making sense is where the emphasis of this wish is at. I mean, if we are going to Tevinter, we're not going to have the time to cater for our entire family Dragon Age 2 style. I imagine that if we are going to Tevinter, it's going to be very hush hush hush. I don't think we'll be walking around with a large family here. I feel instead we'll have to sneak into Tevinter. However, pushing the large family concept out of the window, we could have a sibling again as a starting companion, potentially being able to customize them, hopefully at least, that's what I'd like. And then completing the prologue, origin story or tutorial areas, whatever we get within this next Dragon Age game. Primarily, I just want a sibling party member that we're able to customize Mass Effect Andromeda style. As I mentioned before, I wanted the sibling dynamic to go much further in Mass Effect Andromeda. I wanted the game to allow us to explore together and build a better platonic relationship with our sibling. Basically, for Dragon Age 4, I would like a sibling companion, and I would like more from what we got from Mass Effect Andromeda. You see, with the evolution of BioWare basically building better families for our protagonists within each game, they seem to be advancing and growing much more at building this dynamic. So maybe in Dragon Age 4, with BioWare learning from their mistakes of Andromeda, Dragon Age 2, Dragon Age Origins, maybe in Dragon Age 4 we will get a better sibling dynamic that has grown so much more from their previous titles. I just love having a sibling party member within BioWare games. Generally, our siblings have been there from the very start, like our protagonist. I really enjoy this family dynamic. It adds a different heart and feel to the story. It's very much the same reason why I enjoy Star Wars so much, because of these family-centric themes, and it just adds a different feel. That being said, what if I don't want to play as a human Jackdaw? What about the other races Jackdaw? The other races in the Dragon Age might not have a family Jackdaw. What about Dragon Age 4 Jackdaw? I want to play as a Qunari or Dwarf. Well, I can say that it would definitely be much harder to incorporate a family with these different races, especially with me being selfish and wanting a sibling companion. I think having different playable races is why we didn't see any family members or any siblings in Dragon Age Inquisition. We had 4 playable races in Dragon Age Inquisition, and we didn't see any of our family. We didn't hear about them really, other than tiny dialogue pieces. So I can see why we didn't have a family in Inquisition, because it would be so hard to incorporate a sibling for each of these races. So in that sense, I can now see the likelihood of a family dynamic reoccurring in Dragon Age 4. I think it's all dependent upon getting different playable races. I feel that if we are to play as a human again, and only a human, which no one would want, then we probably would get a family like Dragon Age 2 and Mass Effect Andromeda. But I think that if we can play as other races, then we probably won't get a sibling companion or a party member to the scale that I would like. I think that if we play as different races, then we might see our family in an origin story and have a small sibling party member for that. But for the rest of the game itself, I highly doubt it. But we could still get small NPCs like Fergus in Dragon Age Origins. We could still have a family and have siblings with other NPCs in the world space that other races will not come across. These characters being that we've already experienced within the tutorial, the origin story or the prologue that we will get in Dragon Age 4, dependent on our race. But guys, you've heard what I'd like. I'd just love to see a sibling companion that I can customize in Dragon Age 4, and that I'm able to live out and experience and have a platonic relationship with them as we venture towards Tevinter. In any case guys, tell me down below what your opinions are upon any family dynamics in Dragon Age 4. Would you like it? No? Yes? Why not? Why do you like it? Do you see it happening at all, and do you like it in any other BioWare games? Heck, have you even witnessed a family dynamic in any non-BioWare games? Tell me down below. But for all your things BioWare, Dragon Age 4, Mass Effect's anticipated future, Anthem, and any other IPs I may steer myself into, you're already in the right place. But until then, I have been Jackdaw, and I should go.